I love it. I love it. I love it. How you fellas doing?
Very good.
Awesome. Awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Come on in. This is the last live session of the night. My name is Quisha Member, President and Co-Founder of Diversity and Diabetes. I'm joined here with Casey Creel, my fabulous co-founder. Where did the fellas go? I no longer see them. Show non-video. Oh, okay. Just went off on video. Okay, so you guys go ahead and get set up. We're just gonna get there we go. We're back. We're back. Awesome. It would not be a virtual event without some type of technical difficulties, but we're gonna have a fabulous session. Thanks again, everyone, for joining on your Friday night. I'm excited for this session. I don't know about you, Casey, but I've been looking forward to this session all day because I feel like Matt and Brandon are practically brothers. We work so closely together. We've done a lot of work already together in the diabetes space. So I want to go ahead, if you guys are ready, and introduce you all, and then kind of let you take it over from here. So you need a couple more minutes, or are you ready to go?
We're trying to get the audio to sync so that it's not coming through my computer because we can see you over there, but you're supposed to hear us through here. So
Okay, well, let's give you some time, Casey. We know how to talk. We can.
Yeah, we do.
you just need 1 second.
We know how to talk. So, favorite session today, Casey. What's been your favorite session today? And I already
Yeah,
know what you're gonna say.
I mean, yeah, you know what I'm gonna say. The one we are just in, the self-advocacy one. I love those ladies. I mean, I wish we had hours on hours to talk. So it was so good. What about you?
I love that talk. Actually, I went back and I watched Jiggy's talk from yesterday, and I was like, oh, because I didn't watch it live because I was moderating. Whose session was I moderating yesterday? I can't even remember,
Anna
but
and Antoinette.
Antoinette, that's it. Antoinette and Tiana, they have the session on diversifying diabetes camp, which was a great session as well. But Jiggy's just such an inspirational speaker, and then just listening to her story. She is Korean, and she talked about how in her culture you have to have these high expectations, and if you get an A, it's like, well, why come you didn't get an A plus? And in the beginning of the talk, she talked about how when she first got diabetes, she was literally trying to get a 4.0 with her A1C. She was like, I don't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I was expected to get a 4.0 in everything else. I was just trying to get a 4.0 with my A1C. And I thought, oh my God, that's so true, especially for people that come from families where you're expected to be a high achiever, you're expected to be perfect. You want to kind of manage everything perfectly. Hello, and thank you so much, Megan. You've been rocking with us for the last couple of days. So glad to have you back here down the street. Yeah, go ahead if you are joining and put your name in the chat, where you're from. Looks like, let's see, Megan says the mental health wisdom from people of color living with diabetes was awesome as well. So yeah, it's something for everybody. Everybody can kind of find a session or a topic that really speaks to the work they're doing. And also, maybe I'm a little biased. I thought our session was one of my
It was
favorite
good.
sessions as
It was
well,
good.
Casey, because I love, again, we talked about advocacy and we talked about allyship, and not just being an ally, being an accomplice, which is sometimes what's needed to do this type of work. So we've had some really, really great sessions, and thanks for everybody that's joined and attended. And let me check in with the fellas.
We're good.
Fellas,
We're up.
Y'all
We're
good to
good.
go?
We're
we're
ready.
ready to go.
We're
Alrighty,
ready.
so I'm gonna go ahead and introduce you all, and then I will give you the floor, and Casey and I will kind of fade to black, and it'll be yours.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we have the fortunate opportunity to be able to be with Matt and Brandon while they record a live segment of their Bolus Maximus podcast. This episode of Guys Talk Tough Stuff is going to center around reasonable accommodations in the workplace. And I'm really excited to hear from both of their experiences as it relates to this topic. So Matt, Tarro, and Brandon Denson are co-founders of Bolus Maximus. I love that name. A nonprofit aimed to support overlooked and underserved communities. Brandon and Matt have worked towards inclusion and support where it was very much needed within the male population of people living with diabetes. With a background in digital media, advertising, and art, Matt, who lives in San Diego, uses his creativity as an outlet when burnt out from diabetes. Brandon is a business owner and diabetes advocate. He is a graduate and former walk-on star linebacker at Michigan State University, and he has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. After graduating, he played for 3 years in the Arena, Canadian, and National Football League, and went on to become an assistant defensive coordinator at Detroit's Voyager College Prep. I hope I said that right. The rest of their bio is located in the agenda, so please go and check that out. I'm sure they're going to leave some information with you where you can contact them and connect with them after the session. If there is nothing else, the floor is all yours. Take it away.
Sincere thanks for the introduction, Quisha and Casey, for putting this on in general. So thank you very much. Hello to everybody out there in the virtual summit. I hope you have enjoyed thus far the discussions. We just left the ladies talking over with Kylene. That was really engaging. Thank you, everybody who shared. And then earlier about advocating for yourself. So it was really great to see individuals out talking about some of these topics. And Brandon and I had, thought about what should we talk about? What can we talk about? And I think given appropriately the amount of stress in the last year, let's focus on work. You need to work to live. There's been a lot of discussion about minimum wage, for instance. And then, at the same time, what can you do if diabetes is not up to par in any way, shape, or form enough for you to be performing at work? What happens? So,
yeah, let's pour these. Want to pour the slides up?
I got a couple slides here. I would love if you've joined us today. Again, hello, thank you. Brandon and I are in San Diego really quickly. We started Bolus Maximus about a year ago as two men living with diabetes, both in our mid-30s. Wow, that sounds fun to say. We realized I was diagnosed at 16 and 17 years old, and we really didn't have strong role models or individuals that we could look up to who were males. It wasn't easy. And so for two young men to go to college immediately, come out of college and start their professional careers, and then make it as far as we did into our early 30s and say, where are the guys at? Where is everyone? And so for us, as two guys who met through
social media,
as we like to say, people go, how did you meet each other? We go, the internet. We started to talk through Instagram and then phone calls for hours at a time. And we would talk about who we were involved with in the diabetes community, what it was that we were doing, what was working, what wasn't working for us and others, what could we do? And then in the beginning of the pandemic, we saw an opportunity to start bringing people together. Bolus Maximus aims to support, educate, and motivate individuals living with diabetes. And support became the biggest and most profound thing for us to hone in on at the beginning of the pandemic. So we started Zoom calls. So every Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, you can join our Zoom call. It is for 6 p.m. Eastern time, 11 p.m. UK. I got it. Okay. And so every week we are in the same place at the same time, and we have a lot of the same people that join. And we have really started to see some growth, not just in the size of the group, but in the discussion. And I think that's probably one of the most important things for us. And so, interestingly enough, we decided that it warranted a nonprofit organization, and specifically as we join today's people of color living with diabetes, the underrepresented communities, and underserved communities, we would no longer feel comfortable sitting idly on the sidelines, and we decided to do something about that. So
the only way you create change is to make it, so we're playing our part. We're doing what we have to do, at the end of the day. And that's, men talk tough stuff, and a lot of times we don't talk about these things, but we're here. today.
I'm glad
and we're here every day.
I'm glad you said that. So the reason we call it Guys Talk Tough Stuff, or Diabetic Men Talk Tough Stuff, is because it is difficult to talk about some of the discussions that we've had with each other and within our group. For instance, we'll go ahead and break the ice here. One of the things that we're currently having some more discussions about in the group and overall, and we're looking to speak with some professionals and really broaden this conversation in people who identify as a male, erectile dysfunction, living with diabetes. It is something that is typically not talked about. I know it's a touchy subject. It's taboo to talk about it in public, but there needs to be a place for it to happen. And so Brandon and I really understood that whatever the topic of conversation is, there should be a place for it. So we find ourselves now as safe space facilitators. And segue.
Let's get it.
Your employer is supposed to create a safe space for you if you need it. That safe space, it could be mental space, it could be physical, it could be emotional. And so today, we are not the authority on taking leave from work. We are not trained professionals. We hold no degrees. We are not trained medical professionals. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
Thank you. So we need to reiterate that. But what we do have are a couple slides that just talk very briefly about some details, and we can tell you more about where to find this information. Let us see here if I can share a screen. And that is play. All right. So what is a reasonable accommodation in the workplace? Like what does that mean? When you hear that, what do you think about when you hear that?
Man, I think about so many different things, as far as living with diabetes. I think of so many different things about what the reasonable accommodations could be and should be. And obviously, if we're dealing with workplaces that have never dealt with someone living with diabetes, type 1, type 2, later, whatever it is, they may not fully understand what that individual needs far as the accommodations go. So I think first and foremost it's the employer understanding what that disease and that condition looks like, and how it looks for every individual specifically as it pertains to them, because we all know that we live with diabetes, but we have different, go through different procedures in regards to monitoring our blood sugars and to living our best life with diabetes. No one formula is the same for anybody living with diabetes. There are a lot of similarities, but nothing is the same.
An accommodation for Brandon, who lives with diabetes, may not be reasonable for myself, who also lives with diabetes. And I think, to Brandon's point, it being reasonable is, in general terms, it's really a way for you to ask for something that you should be granted, or is appropriately afforded to you, we'll say, in a way. And you are making an appropriate request through your employer. And what that typically looks like is that a request for a reasonable accommodation. And so I've personally filled out a couple of those. I can talk a little bit about that. But we'll take a look here at what it was that I needed to fill out one of those forms. And so this is taken straight from the website for the Department of Labor. There's information that we will have available on our own personal website as we continue to work with them and have some discussions. But the Family and Medical Leave Act allows employers to take up to 12 weeks of unpaid medical leave over a 12-month period, and here are the reasons why. You can take it in a continuous block, working a reduced schedule, or on an intermittent basis. You and I were just talking about this before we jumped on here, and like, it's very appropriate for us to address these, but I also want to make sure that we could talk about this, give this presentation, and walk out of here and be like, awesome, we did a good job. But I think the real important thing, and that we've talked about this a couple of days ago, was the difference in it's like a stigma, or there's red tape for people of color, or potentially they think there's red tape for them. I think that's the more appropriate way to say it, is they believe there's red tape for them when in reality, appropriately, these laws.
You have the right.
You have rights.
You have the right. You have the right.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Has there ever been a time in your professional career that you would have taken leave based on, and as it says here, what in the event of the employee's own serious health condition, would you at any point in your professional career say that you would have or could have, should have taken medical leave?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Why didn't you?
Didn't know. Didn't know that I had the right to do that. And then, like you said, the first thing that comes up is because there's a difference between FMLA and taking medical leave. The first thing that goes through somebody possibly in an underserved, under-resourced area is that I cannot take off of work because I have to provide not only for myself, but for my family. And if that strikes through anybody's brain, it's like, it's not an option. You don't have an option to not work. So now we're just putting more stress on top of you because you need the break, but you can't take the break. You know what I mean? But then also not knowing that you have the right to FMLA or take a medical leave, because at the end of the day, that medical leave could honestly refresh you, put you in a different mindset, and help you out.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my history, but 100%, without a doubt. And so on the other side of the FMLA is the American with Disabilities, and it is civil rights legislation that works to increase the inclusion of people with disabilities in all aspects of community life, including employment. It's a little different. It's not like you can take leave and say, oh, ADA, but it helps in the process of you actually getting the job. And I think it's also important for people to understand that reasonable accommodation could also mean before you even start. So you're asking for them to make it's a reasonable. There is a reason. It is within the limits of my ability to ask, and it is an accommodation that is to be made by somebody else for me. Ask it.
Because we do know that people, when they go into an interview, and this goes back into playing professional sports, which that was a job as well. Sometimes people don't like to disclose that they have a chronic illness or a disease. So it's the same thing in the business world of corporate America, that some people, and I'll say people of color, because I've talked to a lot of people that have felt like they don't want to let their employer know that they have diabetes because technically they think that their employer will look at them differently as like, oh, well, we have to make these sacrifices for this individual.
Right.
But really, that's where the ADA comes in, far as
is BS. It's like it's written in plain language.
Exactly.
So the slide that I'm showing here, and anybody listening to our podcast, is the American with Disabilities Act, and it kind of just talks about Title I of the ADA, covers private employees and state, local, and government employees with 15 or more. And prohibits public entities, regardless of size, for discriminating against qualified individuals with disabilities and their employees' practices. So the reason that this is up here is so that on the very last bullet point, it says the ADA prohibits covered employees from discriminating against qualified individuals with disabilities in job application procedures, hiring, firing, advancement, compensation, job training, and other terms, conditions, and privileges of employment. I will say that last one again. Other terms, conditions, and privileges of employment. If you get your good-looking butt employed by somebody, you have privileges of employment. And those privileges of employment include something like the FMLA Medical Leave Act. So you are entitled. You can't be discriminated against because you have a disability. Somebody can't tell you that they don't want to hire you because you have diabetes, and the chances of you taking FMLA leave are actually pretty high. We're not going to hire you. You would have every right to go bring their butts to court based on what was signed into law in the 1990.
Can't discriminate.
And then this is just a little bit of information about interplay between the FMLA and ADA, and it is possible for an employee to have a serious health condition that entitles them to leave under FMLA, and is a disability that entitles them to leave as a reasonable accommodation under the ADA. So basically like being double covered. So if leave is being requested for an employee's own serious health condition, assessment of nature of condition will determine the benefits that are applicable and most appropriate. And then while everybody is generally in these conversations, we're talking about diabetes, we're talking about chronic illness, it does not cover broken bones, pregnancy, flu, appendicitis, or non-chronic infections. So it is very limited in a way. So what we want to talk about here a little bit is our personal experience. And so, and again, the barrier, right? Do you know about it? If you don't, have you ever thought about it? Without knowing about it, right? Like thinking like, damn, I could really use a couple days off of work. Maybe, I don't know, maybe like 3 weeks.
Exactly.
How about 12?
Yeah.
Let's break down why.
You've been in this situation, not just once, a couple of times. So, what I'll honestly ask you, like, what was your reason for, taking medical leave? Like, one, how did you know? And then two, what led you to take medical leave? Like, what were you going through? What were you experiencing?
So both times I've taken medical leave twice, and I'll explain both of them here. The first time I took medical leave, I was working. I started in New York City, working and came out to California, and I was working in Los Angeles for a media agency on a giant media client, entertainment client called NBC Universal. Given their location, they are located here, and so I was busy, to say the least. And so 2016 timeline. And so as the director of my team comes out to visit from New York, he's got meetings, sees clients, sits down. He's like, hey, you want to grab lunch? We would go grab lunch. Probably did that like twice. And after the second time, it was apparent to this individual who was very astute that I was, we'll say, having some difficulties. And it didn't stem from the position I was in. It was a personal thing. I talked a lot about diabetes. I was very open, and I was very open with him. And I said, I moved to California, and I wanted to start exploring. I had never been camping before. I had never really done anything like adventurous, like truly adventurous. And so here I am on a leash in a yard that's acres, that feels like I've got acres to run. And I'm chained up next to the door. That's how I felt. And so the individual who I'd been conversing with, who was a C-level employee, says, why don't you get the hell out of here? Why don't you take leave? I remember sitting at lunch in a bar right across from the office that was pretty much empty, very well lit, and I had this like epiphany. Was like, what did you just say? He's like, why don't you get the hell out of here? Why don't you leave? Take leave and go explore. Go get it out of your system, is what he said. In a way, right? Get it out of your system. Not like one time and done and you'll never be disappointed with diabetes again. But I was so disappointed with my diabetes because I was trying to make changes in that regard that at the same time, work was overpowering any effort that I was trying to make for my diabetes. And I voiced that. They recognized that, and they said, listen, you are afforded an opportunity to do this. We got the paperwork in order, and the next thing I knew, I took 12 weeks medical leave, 10 of them being paid. and I saw more doctors.
Let me ask you, how did that make you feel? Like once you...
Oh man, like I had never felt before. You real talk. This is like, so as guys who got diagnosed in high school, I never appropriately had time to sit down and try to focus on just my diabetes, because hormones, and then college and alcohol. Boom, 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 boom. Next thing you know, you're 25 years old.
Yeah.
You're shoved into a workplace and you're working. That's typically what people are being. It doesn't matter if you're working at the library. It doesn't matter if you're working at the New York Stock Exchange. There are elements of your life that are stressful outside the job, and the job and your position and your functionality there shouldn't suffer because of what happens behind the scenes.
Just go.
Right. So I never felt like I truly had a time to like examine my diabetes. I'm afforded this medical leave, and I changed everything.
Yeah.
I wrote down. So what I told myself was, if I was going to do this, then I better how do I look back on this and make it something where I'm like, this had an impact. So I wrote down everything that I did, all of the food that I ate, all of the insulin that I took, the amount of water that I drank every day, whether or not my partner at the time slept over, how many hours of sleep I got. I wrote everything down for all 12 weeks. I actually continued after my leave ended just because it felt good to do. It helped me identify changes that needed to be made. I saw a doctor, I saw a hematologist, I saw a cardiologist, or a hematologist, and all these other doctors, right? Everybody. Doctors where they're like, you're 30 years old, like, why are you coming in here? And I'm like, well, look at me. So I recognized that I was not in a good place, and I was able to verbalize it, and I did so to somebody that I trusted, and he turned around and gave me the best morsel of information that I ever could have received, was that, hey, buddy, you're like crying in the baby pool. You can stand up and get out of it, right? Like,
great analogy.
Like, I don't know why you feel so stuck where you are. Like, do something about it. So I did. And then at the end of that 12 weeks, the last 3 weeks of that trip, I went on a road trip that ultimately this whole thing, right, changed my life. But that road trip, I had never done anything like that. I did 4,000 miles up to Seattle from Los Angeles, all the way down through Montana, Utah. I'd never been to any of those states.
So I would say it really gave you, it gave you a better understanding of yourself, but yourself living with diabetes, and also on a mental aspect, because you were you were essentially able to step away from your typical everyday life and work on things that won't go away. Diabetes is not going to go away.
Yeah.
But it gave you a better chance to get in sync and in tune with yourself.
Yeah. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and then like sitting up in your bed, kind of looking around and going, all right, what can I do for my diabetes today? Just, and anybody listening and watching at home, think about it. You wake up tomorrow morning. It's not that you don't have the responsibility of going to work, because you will have that responsibility again. Granted, you don't have it that day. You wake up, you're not going to work. You are just solely focused on yourself. Self-care. May it be mental, physical, emotional. Raise the hands. Who's seen a therapist? Ever? Seen a therapist? Who currently sees a therapist? Sorry.
Does talking to myself count?
No.
Oh.
And neither does talking to me. But that was a huge aspect of my process more recently in the second medical leave that I took.
So I was going to jump into that too. So pretty much you kind of knew the procedure on jumping into taking medical leave the second time. So you had a clear cut understanding on how it should be handled and who you needed to talk to and things like that.
Yeah, and if you want a 30,000-foot view in the last 5 years, shortly after I took medical leave, my father passed away. Not too long, a year after I took medical leave, my father passed away. After my father passed, I lost my job and then worked pretty much freelance and low-paying gigs here and there for the next year and a half before getting another job. And then once I got that job, which was at Tandem, I joined in one of the most stressful times for their new technology. So each train car that I've jumped to has been a bed of hot coals.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know you used to be grinding, bro.
Yeah.
Grinding. So
every time I made a move, it was to somewhere where I was like, crap, I'm worried. Oh, man, I'm just.
I mean, sometimes they say the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
There's probably no grass. So the second time around, basically, and again, between the first and second time that I did it was a couple of years, I made an exorbitant amount of changes personally to my lifestyle, my mental thought process, how I did things. And then I said, I know I can do this. And I brought it up to my therapist, and she said, do you want me I was contemplating leaving work. I was contemplating leaving my position and just walking away. And she said, do you want me to write you out on leave in a therapy session? And I said, yes. And 2 weeks later, I started my leave.
I mean, I'm not going to.
It's not that easy. It's not as you don't know all the conversations that I had about the mental, the problems that I was having going into it.
Leading up to that.
All right, you can. Yeah, you're good.
I'll just sign this for you.
Check the box. Granted, it was as easy as her signing a piece of paper, but that paper and her signature came from all of the words that her ears soaked from all of the sessions that I went to with her for over a year, talking about where I was in my personal life, the grief therapy that I was going through as a male diabetic who had never spoken to a therapist ever before he was 30-something years old. So I've lost, my parents, my best friends, are gone. And that stuff for me, those were 4 individual losses that I went through, plus anybody else in my family, which has been a lot. Uncles, grandparents. So everybody deals with loss, but not until I addressed it with my therapist did I realize that typically people don't suffer that many losses in such a short period of time. Speaking of mental health, my best friend took his own life. 2 of my male cousins, first cousins, have taken their own life. 2 other high school friends, males, took their own life. That's 5. I'm not that's 5 guys. I'm 35 years old.
Yeah. Mentally, like we talk about the diabetes, but think about having to go to work and you're losing significant others that are close to you. You know what I mean? Starting with parents and friends.
Yeah, but and imagine you're a single guy, you're by yourself, you live in somewhere in Florida, and you're going through and doing all your stuff, and you haven't lost anybody really, and life is it's kind of just typical, normal. But then a stress and stress and stress and stress, and what outlet? And it's unfortunate that people take this route. 1-800-273-8255. That's the National Suicide Hotline number. I painted that after my best friend took his life with another piece, which I gave to my other best friend, so we each have something. That's just a phone number that you can call, where a lot of people don't do that. They go out and they abuse substances. They don't take their insulin. They try to take too much insulin. They want to hurt. And somebody doesn't come into work and they have to tell the rest of the employees that so-and-so fell under an immense amount of stress. And that is There's no reason to make any conversation dark at any time. But the reality of the situation is, with diabetes, one thing leads to another relatively quickly.
Very quickly. Very quickly.
So if you're stressed and you feel like you can't get out, I made this realization. I'm claustrophobic, bro. I'm claustrophobic. And if I can't wiggle, if I can't move a little bit, I freak out.
Anxiety through the roof.
Yeah, I learned that while I was camping, and I was like, but
but
the anxiety is overwhelming.
Yeah,
that's my point.
I mean, I appreciate you sharing that, because you're talking very personal things that have happened, but also being aware, taking it to the point that you're aware of what's going on. You're aware that things are happening. And sometimes, we get so caught up in the things that we do day to day, whether it's waking up and then taking care of kids if you got kids, or taking care of your significant other, or taking care of family members. Sometimes we forget that we have to take care of ourselves first. We have to understand that it's okay if you need to take medical leave. It's okay if you need FMLA. Just understand that these rules and regulations are put in place to help you, not to hurt you. So remember, if somebody says that you can't or you shouldn't, that's not for them to be able to tell you that, because ultimately you know how you feel and what you need to do. If you need to gain a clearer perspective up here, if that means stepping away from something that you do every day that's causing you more stress, because at the end of the day, if you just keep throwing on weight, at some point you're gonna sink.
Nothing changes if nothing changes.
Exactly. So you have to figure out, how do you address those things, and it's okay. You asked me earlier, like, would I have taken medical leave?
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Working in the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. But I also understand too, and I voiced this to you before, I understand if I would have did that, how my team would have suffered ultimately. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm glad
and that's tough in itself, because I know that, as coming from playing team sports, I know how big of a hit my team would take by me being gone 12 weeks,
they may not full. And so it's really important to distinguish. And I'm glad you said that, is because you're not, unless you're solely employed by yourself and you're an entrepreneur, and you're like, hey, Brandon, I'm going to take the next 12 weeks off. Oh, okay, Brandon, cool. That's not how it goes. You go in to speak with HR, and you have this conversation. You're making a reasonable accommodation request. This is not. However, if you don't, the only reason I knew how to do it the second time was because I did it the first time. And when I did it the first time, the position I had was I was a manager on a team, which meant I had 2 other individuals I was responsible for. So when I left and went out on leave, I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Oh my God. The second time, I didn't even look back to watch the door close. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to my team. What I mean was, I identified so quickly that there is zero, I have no responsibility to tell my team anything. I am under no legal obligation for whatever reason. Now, I also worked at a company that made diabetes equipment. And I think individuals were pretty well aware of how I was, we'll say, getting along mentally. And so it wasn't a surprise, I don't think, to a lot of people to see me take leave. I came back, and then probably, about another 6 months before I walked away. And that was a couple months ago. I am currently looking for work. My resume will be attached in the information.
I think these are the tough conversations that we need to have, because, a lot of people, like I said, I didn't know anything about medical leave. I understand it. I get it. I know what FMLA was, but like the thought coming from underserved, under-resourced areas, if you don't know that, you don't know that you have that option. You're not even thinking that. You're not even thinking, hey, I've been seeing a therapist. I've been working through things. I have I have kids that I have to take, single parents, single mothers, single father homes, you know, grandparents taking care of kids, and they're still working.
Yep.
The thought is like, I have to provide, you know, so that's a whole nother amount of stress that's added to somebody.
Right. Even coming up to say, I think I need to do this, and being fearful of the backlash to say, like, why do you think you can do that? Right. Because that conversation for a lot of people is like, oh, this is so difficult.
Correct.
You go to HR. If
That's
there's anything you want to take away from this, go speak with HR.
Correct.
FMLA. And then also, I think it's very important to any individual who is tuning in, who is a caregiver of somebody living with diabetes, please. California has paid medical leave. This is just through the Employment Development Department, so ca.gov. They've got the EDD. You go through for unemployment benefits, for medical leave, FMLA, for family paid leave. Paid family leave, PFL, provides benefit payments to people who need to take time off of work to care for a seriously ill family member, bond with a new child, participate in a qualifying event because of family member's military deployment. So care for a seriously ill family member. If your child is having issues with his diabetes, and because you have to work 2 jobs, I would hope, if you've heard this or know somebody in that position, that they understand that at least with one of those positions, they should be speaking to somebody about taking some sort of leave.
Without a doubt.
And as we mentioned before, it may not just be like, yo, I'm taking 10 weeks off. It could be an abbreviated schedule. The problem is what happens is people get fired and they say it's for one thing.
Correct.
And it looks like something else.
Exactly. And it's because it was so much on that individual, they weren't able to do.
You weren't performing.
You can't perform. You're not able to perform at a high level, right, because you're already going through so many different things.
So if your level of stress was already so high that you were emotionally and mentally very unwell, physically stressed, going to work every day, and then you go in and tell them you want medical leave, and then 2 weeks later they fire you for underperforming, you are a serious threat to yourself at that point. Respectfully. We are not trained medical professionals. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
I'm sure some medical professionals might agree, but I am not one of them. You're putting yourself in a very vulnerable, stressful, challenging position. And so it needs to change. The conversation needs to happen more often. And so I want to make sure everybody is aware of the Employer Assistance and Resource Network on Disability Inclusion, also known as EARN. They're in Advancing Workplace Diversity. And their website is askearn.org. And they are going to be supporting National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And that is coming up. And so October 2021, National Disability Employment Awareness Month is held to commemorate the many and varied contributions people with disabilities make to America's workplaces and the economy. Meaning that people with disabilities contribute to the success of businesses. Who would have thought? And it's appropriate for them to take the leave that they need when they need to do it.
Let's drop that link in there too, so people can. I'm
just trying to copy it. It won't let me do that. Come on back. If you are still with us here in the chat, we are dropping this. Everybody in there, ask Earn. Perfect. Are there any questions? Is there anybody that was interested in asking a question? If you have a question about this device right here, it has changed color while we've been on the call because my blood sugar is 156 milligrams per deciliter.
And while you explain that, I'll go ahead and drop some links in here as well for the attendees today. appreciate you all for checking in with diversity and diabetes.
And then I also dropped the Department of Labor. What is the difference between paid sick leave, FMLA, and paid family and medical leave? So they're all different types of paid or unpaid work time off. They're distinct policies, and we're intact laws. And so the information that I just dropped is dol.gov. Again, this is Department of Labor. dol.gov. And if you went to the dol.gov website and typed in paid or sick leave, you would probably find this page. So if you don't go directly to the one we dropped here and you didn't join us today.
I started Bolus Maximus for Brent.
That wasn't me.
Oh, it was Casey. What's up, Casey?
Checking out all the links y'all had, I was like, oh, I'm not muted.
No, you're good. No, I don't know if we have any questions coming in, but if we do, we can wait. We can wait a little bit and see if anybody has anything, or if anybody has actually taken medical leave or FMLA, and they just want to share their process on what they had to go through to do that. And is it something that they knew? Did somebody talk them through that process, or did they know that they had the right to go ahead and do that? Because what I find out by talking to a lot of people, especially in underserved, under-resourced areas, they don't know. They don't know. And that's one thing, why we appreciate everything that you ladies are doing at Diversity and Diabetes, is because it's spreading education and most importantly, the knowledge. The knowledge of, like Matt going through it. I know, like, if I'm ever in that situation and I need to do it, instead of, trying to tough it out, do what I need to do, because sometimes, coming up, being Black, it's looked at as a weakness if you take the quote unquote easy way out. But it's not the easy way out if you're doing it to take care of yourself so you can go further ahead. You know what I mean? So sometimes we have to realize, like, this may look like something and you don't have to explain anything to anybody. Like you said, that's a conversation between you, HR, and then your therapist or the doctor that's involved in that situation. It doesn't matter how your team looks at you. You're doing something for yourself so you can better yourself, which ultimately is going to better your team around you, because you're going to be in a better place physically and mentally.
The analogy I would make, if I could, is that taking medical leave for yourself is very similar to having to stop and sit down when you have a low blood sugar so that you can recuperate, in my mind. Because when I have a low, if somebody doesn't tell me to sit down or I don't think about it, chances are I'm not. I'm probably still walking or moving. And which is similar to going into work every day and continuing the same thing. And someone says, yo, your blood sugar is 47. You should probably just sit your ass down.
Chill for a minute.
And that's like us trying to grab you and tell you should take medical leave if you feel like you need to. So that's what we had.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful, Casey, again, for you and Quisha, for the continued relationship we have with Diversity and Diabetes, from what we did earlier this year, which was really exciting and engaging, to putting on this summit. So again, congratulations and thank you. Second annual. Bolus Maximus is available. My personal cell phone number. I'm just kidding. Brandon and I, again, every Sunday, we are available through the Zoom call that we host, bolusm.org. And we will have some more content soon from our friends at Glocos for Bolus Maximus, and more working with the Department of Labor and the EARN team, as we've had a call with them. So more information coming soon. Thank you so much for everybody joining us today. We really appreciate it. Have a great day. And
you know the vibes. Keep it 100.
We did that so that we can end the podcast there.
Thank y'all so much. Thank y'all.
Yeah, no, thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.